Welcome to the Force Always. My name is Diz, aka David Zamet. Let's get on with the news, the views, reviews, and interviews. Anyway, so news really making today. The hunt for Ben Solo was announced the other day via one of the main actors in the last trilogy of Star Wars, which is Adam Driver, who played Kylo Ren / Ben Solo. They are actually one character in two sort of sections of the movie. And so really the YouTubers are Star Wars YouTubers, or even just information YouTubers, are really sort of backtracking a little on their comments with Kathleen Kennedy, because technically this was a dismissed film from the very top. Bob Iger, who actually is the CEO of Disney, and he's a beloved person at the Disney, and I think this here's given him a big mark against his name, amongst Star Wars fans at the moment. So but the YouTubers, the story is the YouTubers are sort of backtracking themselves a little in their discussing about Kathleen Kennedy and turning against Bob Iger because of, dismissing this type of film, and what else was he a part of dismissing or not, and putting out there, releasing, things like that. But more about that a bit later in the show. To more news, can you believe it? There was an aeroplane, and it's an aeroplane with the sign that said "Save the Hunt for Ben Solo." Film, like with the sign on the back of the tail. That was making news, and someone actually paid to do that. That is just save the Hunt for Ben Solo film. Someone went flying over the sky, I think somewhere in America, maybe over Disneyland or something like this, I don't know. But it was definitely in the air, and it was definitely done, as you can see in the picture at the intro of this particular episode. And that was also making news. Anyway, let's get into views. Views is my story ideas. No, I accept. Again, I accept Star Wars for what it is, where it started, where the middle is, and where the end is. It all has, something about it to give to anyone and everyone and stuff like that. Anyway, because I love to create my own Star Wars, or create an episode, or do something with Star Wars, my goodness, I'm gonna give you a very basic idea, which I've expressed before, and this is probably the most obvious thing to do, but there's actually two things that would have Star Wars heads and non-Star Wars people, just movie people in general, go crazy for. If they really want to get the attention of Star Wars in an exciting lead-up way, which so far with Starfighter, it's sort of happening. The Mandalorian Grogu, it's partially there. Not a whole lot of massive interest ever since the first public trailer release, but Star Wars Celebration Japan, I was there in the actual panel, and the excitement was fever pitched in there. But the two things these are story ideas. One of them is not a story idea, but one is a person who can create the most amazing stories, even if that person did not write. I'm talking directed by Steven Spielberg. If one of the Star Wars films had Steven Spielberg attached, it would create excitement. That would be, for me, amazing, and a lot of people out there, amazing. The other one, which is a story idea, which I've sort of talked about this years ago, I think, and it's sort of been down out there anyway through fan films, but a proper but intensely, horrific but still passionate story of Darth Vader. If there's anything that's going to rejuvenate, some excitement, if you're going to backtrack, I hate backtracking. I hate going back in the past and creating stories in between. I'd rather have stories go from now onward, but this would really serve a lot of excitement. I think it's a bit overcooked in a fan film way, but if you created an absolute epic, horrific Darth Vader film that's got to be in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, which is episode 3 and episode 4, where there's about, I think, 19 years where nothing technically happened besides Rogue One and the Andor. So you have to do it before that. I think it would be great. It would be just amazing. Really, in hindsight, the best thing to do with Star Wars is to keep pushing forward. That's what I think. From after episode 9, get into episode 10, 11, 12, and just keep going forward. Because Star Wars deserves a used future about it, as that was the intention of the creator, George Lucas. Not just because it's George Lucas, but it was a great idea. Use future. Who would have thought that? That's, making spick and span clean sort of stuff for movies, but he decided, let's dirty it up. That's great. Anyway, so that's my views for this time around. Let's get into reviews. Speaking of Darth Vader, I have a super collectible, and it's another figure, but this one is a 10 out of 10, I'll tell you that beforehand. I've got a number of variants of this type of figure, which I'll show in the future. But this is Anakin Skywalker, changes to Darth Vader. So there's Anakin Skywalker on one side, and you've got the suit of Darth Vader. So you can actually attach the Darth Vader suit to Anakin Skywalker. Obviously, I'm not going to open this up because I'm an ultra nerd and I must keep it in the packet. And that doesn't mean I'm a 40-year-old virgin either. Anyway, this here is an absolute classic. This was from the Revenge of the Sith movie. Look at this. Beautiful. This is a super hardcore collectible. Anakin, it changes into Darth Vader. It's sort of like a double pack. Well, a 1.5 pack, because that's actually just the cape area of and the helmet of Darth Vader, and that's obviously Anakin Skywalker. It's so good. I love it. And in fact, if you look really close, it has a Sith lightsaber and the Jedi lightsaber in the one pack. 10 out of 10, this one. That's the review. Amazing. So now let's get into reviews. Interviews seems to be sponsored by our friend Michael from Werribee South. He loves asking me questions. So many questions. And he is all over the comments page yet again. And if you do want to make a comment, or if you do want to make a question, send it in directly to my YouTube channel. I don't really have an Instagram sort of happening, or an X or a Twitter. I just keep it real, straightforward, YouTube. Anyway, so let's see what Michael from Werribee South is asking this week. What does Chewbacca do when Han Solo dies? Well, this was actually in The Force Awakens. And this was probably one of the most horrific moments in hardcore Star Wars fans, because they were just gutted with this. For me, it was part of the story. It's a very emotional lead up to this point. What does Chewbacca do when Han Solo dies? He really does, growl out loud. And he gets a bit angry, starts shooting and stuff like that. That's what he does. He growls out loud, and he was at a fair distance away, and he pretty much starts shooting, with passion and intent. Second question is, did Han Solo ever meet Yoda? To this point in the storyline of Star Wars, no. No, he has not. In the beginning, when we first technically got to know Han Solo, which was essentially in the original trilogy, he was a non-believer with Jedi's and all this fantasy sort of thing. He thought it was just made up stuff, and by episode 7, 8, 9, which was the latest episodes of the episodic saga cinematic versions, movies, whatever you want to call it. He sort of was settled in understanding and believing in what that uh, thing does, which is the Force, Jedi, stuff like that. But did Han Solo ever meet Yoda? No, which is straightforward. The next question from Michael from Werby South: is Han Solo a villain or hero? I tell you what, these are mind-boggling questions. Mind-boggling questions from this guy, Michael from Werby South. He just loves asking me questions. But anyway, he is technically he is a hero. He was a part of destroying the first Death Star with Luke Skywalker, and helped him sort of pave the way. And he was a hero, but he's always been a bit of a sort of a rotten scoundrel, a dirty, rotten scoundrel that is a hero. Sort of had his ups and downs in his life. Then the next question from Michael from Werby South: what happened to R2D2? This is a good question. When we last left R2D2, it was in Rise of Skywalker. So he didn't die. He wasn't put down. He wasn't stopped. He's just been left as is. So his journey will continue, and rightly so, because he's a droid. He is an electronic moving computer, and so death for that is not really a timeline like living organisms like humans and even aliens, if that really exists. But yeah, so R2D2 is still alive. We've just left him in Rise of Skywalker. I can't remember the exact last scene, but he's still there. That's what happened to R2D2. So then the next question from Michael from Wybusat, the last question actually: did Kylo regret killing Han Solo? Well, I would say by Rise of Skywalker, he did. He redeemed himself. He turned to the light with the help of Rey Skywalker, and I'm sure it was never said. There was never a scene of regret, but there was, you can tell that I'm sure, regretted doing that. So did Han Solo translate to English? He's got, did you regret killing Han Solo? Translate to English. Don't know what that translate to English means, but yeah. So let's Kylo, which is Ben Solo, really did regret killing Han Solo, his dad. Anyway, so that is the interviews. Let me just add just a bit more of an opinion. I was sort of saying that I was coming back to later on, which was in the news. The YouTubers backtracking a little at the moment. Now, don't get me wrong. There's good YouTubers, there's bad YouTubers, there's whatever. I accept actually all the opinions of YouTubers. Like I just go, okay, that person's about this person's about that. I accept it. That's their style. But I'm not. I know that there's just a. So what happens? I think is that 10 years ago, and I was almost. I think I started this channel about 10 years ago. That's how long I've been doing this, and I may not be super successful, but I'm the force always. I'll keep rocking. So really, YouTubers, you sort of, there's a lot of movie type shows back then, And they were sort of throwing around ideas. This is what I've said before, but they were throwing ideas what you could do with Star Wars, with directors and writers, types of movies and stuff like that. I'm sure Disney was listening into this and scouring the internet, getting sort of, ideas, research, and what they can and can't do. And I think this throwing around the ideas with YouTubers really confused Disney execs or writers, because I think they just took a lot on board, and a lot of the ideas that YouTubers had really did come true with the latest trilogy. Sort of spare the moment type stuff. You could have a different director to each. You could have a really original film. You could have all these weird things happen, and I think it's sort of like that's where I think the whole toxic fan base has become mad with, people like Kathleen Kennedy, now Bob Iger, Disney, and stuff like that, because they are the ones that are in control of Star Wars, not, George Lucas, which George Lucas happily sold it. And so really, the influence, I think, was taken on by Disney in the wrong way. If you don't believe me in their influence, if you look, I think either in The Last Jedi or The Force Awakens, it was one of those two Blu-ray DVDs, in the special features, in the documentary, it actually starts off with a number of YouTubers as sort of like, showing a collage of the hype from media. And it's obvious that they were, upfront and personal. And I'm sure that they were scouring the internet, YouTube, of what was good and bad to do, and it just got messed up. But even though it's messed up, for me, I still think I still think Star Wars is on track. I think the whole feeling of Star Wars is definitely really low. The whole energy is low, but I think it's from the amount of negative feedback that is happening generally. And, you could simply just put pause and just accept the story for what it is. Now, I know that sounds like, you're just taking it up the behind and just accepting it. Well, it's not. It's actually, the story is being told by other storytellers. You've just got to use your imagination, have some fun, and just keep rocking. And that's it. And that's it for the show this time around. Until next time, my friends, keep rocking.